Today my guest is Rebecca Traister, a notable feminist and journalist who writes for New York Magazine, Elle, The Nation, and other publications. Rebecca Traister, welcome to the Drexel interview.
Thanks for having me.
You know, we teach all people to try and control their anger, not just women. I mean, that's part of being civilized, is to control your anger. And so, as someone who's trying to create a center for civil discourse here at Drexel, where we can talk across difference without screaming at each other, I guess I wonder about forwarding anger as a way to express oneself, and whether, in fact, we shouldn't be punishing or teaching men that they can't be angry. I mean, I guess all these emotions are complicated, but I want your take on all this.
Well, there are a couple things I'd say. That tears for women are often one of the ways that they're permitted to let their anger out. They work particularly well for white women, and that's something that we need to, when we talk about crying and the fact that for women, and there are all kinds of studies, a woman who cries, who's accusing a partner of domestic violence, if she cries on the witness stand, that the accused man is likely to get a longer sentence than if she shows anger. If she shows anger, the accused man gets a shorter sentence.
Because crying shows a certain subordination?
Yes, or vulnerability, or if, again, and this is primarily accrues to white women, a desire for protection. That doesn't work for women of color who, within a white patriarchy, aren't understood as traditionally feminine in the same way that white women are. It's very, so we can't just say crying works for everybody, right? But there's nothing wrong with crying. The problem is, and I also want to go back to this notion that civil discourse would preclude the expression of anger. Anger is very often civil. I don't think anger, when I talk about the uses of anger, or that's actually Audre Lorde's terms, the uses of anger, but the expression of anger doesn't always have to be about yelling and pointing a finger. I write in the book about Rosa Parks. Now, the ultimate act of civil disobedience, refusing to get out of your seat. And one of the things I'm talking about is how we confirm for ourselves the notion that anger and challenge to power is somehow automatically disruptive or not civil or impolite. But in fact, Rosa Parks was motivated by anger. Her entire career, she writes about anger. Anger drove her into a civil rights movement. It drove her into being an investigator for the NAACP, who investigated the gang rapes of black women by white men in the Jim Crow South, and the false claims of sexual assault made by white women against black men to justify lynching. Rosa Parks was furious, but we are never taught about her fury. We're only taught about her civility as it comports with this issue. Well, she didn't do anything dangerous. So I want to challenge the notion that in a world where we want to encourage civil discourse, that would mean an automatic discouragement of angry expression. I think the opposite. I think and anger can be destructive and it can be divisive, and I would never want to argue against that. But I think especially for vulnerable people, non-white, non-men, anger, we don't appreciate its other qualities, that it can be connective, that it can be galvanizing, rational, a full part of human rational reaction to inequality. And so I think that part of my argument would be to argue, no, part of civil discourse is acknowledging and taking seriously the anger of vulnerable people in response to injustice, and understanding it as having been catalytic to many of the movements that have transformed this country in ways that have taken many forms, whether it's street protests and, peaceful ones, or throwing rocks, or whether it's acts of civil disobedience, striking, the teachers' strikes, the women's march, right? None of those were not civil. They're all civil, and they're all angry expressions.
And we are at a turning point, and your work, it seems to me, is helping to move us to that next place.
Thank you so much. That's
I
very
want
lovely.
to thank you so much for being here today.
I'm happy to
This
have
has
been
been
here.
such an impassioned conversation.